Hello and welcome to Comics Corner with me, your host, Connor Nolan. Over the course of each episode, I'm going to break down a comic book story and discuss its main character's plot, talk a little bit about the fan reception, give it my own personal rating, and also where you can find the comic book. Now, sit back, relax, and get ready to learn about comics. Hello and welcome back, everybody. And today we are doing something new, something different. Today we are doing a story not from Marvel and not from DC, but from Image. Dun dun dun. Okay, so seriously though, we're gonna do Invincible Volume 1, which is called Family Matters, which covers Invincible issues number 1 through issue number 4. In case you weren't paying attention about 30 seconds ago when I said it comes from Image Comics and it was published in 2003. We're going to talk about a couple other quick facts. It was written by Robert Kirkman, who is known for writing the Walking Dead comics. An animated series based off of the comics just came out this year in March. And the comic ran from 2003 to about 2018 with its last issue coming out then. It was a little muddled because some people say, oh, well, technically they announced it in 2016 and it was supposed to come out in 2017, but it actually ended in 2018. So we're just going to go with it ended in 2018. I personally have read this series and I love it. We're going to talk about the three main characters that are featured predominantly in this book. And that would be the Grayson household. The first character I want to talk about real quick is Invincible, which is, in case you didn't notice from the title of the comic being Invincible, the title character, or Mark Grayson as he is known in his alter ego, who he's got superhuman strength, stamina, endurance. He's basically invulnerable. Like there are a couple things that can hurt him. He's also got an enhanced healing factor. He's got decelerated aging. He's got high-speed flight, and he can travel interstellarly. Okay, then we're gonna go on to Omni-Man, Nolan Grayson, who is Mark Grayson's father, and in this universe, he's kind of like Superman. Not really, but like basically. He's got superhuman strength, stamina, endurance. He's also basically invulnerable. He's got an enhanced healing factor. He's got decelerated aging. He's got high-speed flight, interstellar travel, and dominant genetics. This part, if you decide to read the comic for yourself and get a little further into it than what we're going to discuss, that is a very important factor in later parts of the story. And then the last person that we're going to talk about is Debbie Grayson, who is, in case you didn't guess it, Mark's mom, Nolan's wife. And in the first couple of issues, she's kind of just there and it's like, oh, I'm the mom. But as the series progresses, oh my goodness, I'd have to say she's probably in my top 10 favorite characters because her whole character arc, she starts out as the loving, devoted wife and the mother, and then it kind of turns and gets a little cynical and then it kind of like goes back, but then, this series is beautiful. Okay, now we're going to go and move on to the plot of the first 4 issues, which also takes place in this first volume. Alright everybody, let's jump into the plot of the first volume of Invincible. So, we open up. The very first page that you see is the title character, Invincible, flying with someone that looks like they've got a bomb strapped to their chest. And then he just yeets him into the sky and kaboom! And then he gets knocked into the snow and then he flies off. And I know what you're thinking, what? But then we cut to 4 months ago, and we get our first actual interaction with Mark Grayson, Invincible, and it is his mother banging on the bathroom door, telling him to hurry up, and he's taking a dump reading the comic, and she's like, you're gonna have to hurry up, otherwise you're gonna be late to school, and he's like, I'm getting there. And then we cut, thankfully, to him out of the bathroom, and they have a little interaction, and he's like, oh, where's Dad? And she's like, He's at work, I'm assuming, and he says, "Okay, let me see what's up." And they turn on the TV and they see that Omni-Man is fighting a dragon. And he's like, "Oh well, now we know where he is." And she says, "That's good. I hope he brings me back something nice, because I've never been where what appears to be Taiwan, because that's where Omni-Man is fighting the dragon." And then we catch up with Mark at school, and we are introduced to his best friend, William. And they have a little back and forth, and he's like, "Okay, you gonna come hang out with us tonight?" And he's like, "I gotta go work." And then this is by far one of the funniest panels in the book so far. We see Mark at and before we get to this part, something that needs to be made clear. When we cut back to 4 months ago, he doesn't have his powers yet. But when he's at work, and it's like a Burger King knockoff, and he goes to throw trash into the dumpster, and he launches this bag of trash into orbit, and he's like, "It's about time." And we pick up at family dinner, and he's talking to his mom. And he's like, "I had a pretty interesting day," and then whoom, there comes his dad, and he's talking about, "Oh, I had to deal with this," and she's like, "Oh, did you take care of the dragon?" He's like, "Yes, I did." And they have a little banter back and forth, and then the mom says to him, "Oh, you were saying about your day." He's like, "Oh yeah, I finally got my superpowers." And this is by far one of the funniest things. It's just taking so many superhero tropes and just laughing at them, because I'm sorry, if my kid finally developed their superpowers after years of waiting, I'd be freaking out. But no, Debbie's just like, "That's nice. Pass the mashed potatoes." And I was like, what? And then we see Mark taking his first flight, and then we cut away from that. And as I'm saying, we're playing fast and loose here, and we pick up with the diamond heist, and there are these two guys, and this rock guy, and then Mark shows up in this. I don't even know what to call this, but it looks like it's a slightly too small sweater, a pair of gloves, a pair of goggles, and a bandana. And he's beating up this rock guy, and then his dad's like, "What are you wearing?" Because his dad shows up, and he's like, "What are you wearing?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I wanted to test this out." And he's like, "You've had your powers for like a week. You need to not do this right now." And he's like, "Well, I've actually had them for 2 weeks, Dad." He's like, "Okay. Well, we can't have you running around in a pair of pajamas, pretty much." So they take him to this tailor shop, and it's great because it says "prom dresses by day, nuclear powered suits by night," and we are introduced to this great character that is going to show up later down the line too with the series, and he's just the guy that you go to get your suit made. And Mark's trying on these. He's got on this suit, and he's like, "I'm not feeling it. I like the goggles though." And he's like, "Okay, well, if you at least tell me the name you're gonna go by, maybe that'll give me something to go with." And he's like, "Well, I haven't thought up the name yet, but I want the suit to be iconic." And he's like, "Yeah. Why don't you come back to me when you have a name?" Then we cut to Mark in school, and he's dealing with this mean teacher, and he says to the one guy to stay behind. And then we see Mark deal with a bully, shoves him into a locker. I'm talking like dents the locker door. He's in there, and he's like, "Don't pick on that kid again." Mark's in the principal's office, and the principal's giving him this hard time. He's like, "Listen, you're a good kid, but I want you to know you're not invincible." And that's where Mark gets the idea. And then we cut to a bank robbery, and we see the bank robbers getting away, and then Invincible in his classic costume, which I also have to say, the way that it's shaped is so that it makes the image I, like the letter I, not an I like in a person, but the image comics logo I, and it's beautiful. And he's holding up this truck, and he's like, "Oh, you guys need this?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we'll just shoot you." And he's like, "Listen, you can try that, but I'm invincible." And then we cut to issue number 2, and we cut to Nolan, who is Mark's father, telling him all about his home planet and how it was a place full of peace and tranquility, and it's this perfect utopia. And they decided, because there's no war, they got all these advanced technologies, they're going to um, they're going to go throughout the universe and help everyone else. That's, they're just going to go to random planets and help make them prosperous. He also explains that the Viltrumites, which is the race of people that he belongs to, and Mark is half Viltrumite, also have these incredible gifts of flight, strength, speed, yada yada. And he's talking about how their whole operation is set up to be peaceful throughout the universe. And he's like, oh, and I was part of this group of people that was scanning for planets to help, and I found Earth, and I felt it was in my core that I needed to help these people. And he's like, but they didn't want to let me go, and they didn't want to send a survey team, blah blah blah. And he's like, well, he made a deal with them, and that he was going to be Earth's sole protector. And then we cut to him getting to Earth, and he's stopping all of this terrible stuff. And then he talks about how it only took about a year, not completely a year. He said it was a little less than a year, and then he met his mother. And then he's talking about how as you grow older and when you hit puberty, Mark, you're gonna be experiencing all of these things like acne, and you're gonna be thinking about girls in a different way. And then there is a very high chance that you're gonna start developing super speed. And Mark, who in this flashback is obviously a child, probably 7 or 8, something like that, maybe 10. He's like, wow, I'm going to be able to fly? Then we cut to Mark now. He's like, I can fly. And then he goes for a night flight in his pajama pants. And he happens upon this guy that's stealing a box of games. Superpowered dude, just knocks him out, bang, bang, boom. And then we're introduced to the teen team. Yeah, teen team. Really hard to pronounce. You gotta make sure you say the right word first. And they help him out. And, they're kind of laughing at him because, it's a dude in a pair of pajama pants. And they're like, oh, the leader's like, oh, I'm Robot. That's Adam, Eve, Rexplode, Duplicate. And, in case you couldn't tell from the names, those are basically their powers. Fast and loose. And Mark's like, oh, I swear I've seen that girl before. It turns out that Adam Eve goes to his high school. And so, they're bantering back and forth. She takes him to this spot to get changed into their superhero costume. They fly off and they go to the teen team's base, which is inside of a bridge, and I gotta say, that's pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Robot's like, oh, if you guys would have been 2 minutes later, I would have had to go deal with the situation by myself. We pick up with the guy that was stealing a box of games, and he's actually one of the 2 Mahler twins, and they were stealing the games to take some sort of nano chip or some sciencey stuff to stick into their robots. But then Robot, Adam, Eve, and Invincible roll up, and they start taking care of them, and make sure you don't let anybody start up the robots, otherwise we're gonna have a one heck of a day. And then we cut to a mall, and we see this kid wake up. He's like, where am I? He opens his shirt, and then boom, explosion. End of issue 2. Issue number 3. We cut to the high school, and they're talking about how we're working on all of this stuff to keep the kids safe. Mark and Eve are talking a little bit, talking about stuff, and Mark tries to flirt with her, and then she's like, I'm dating Rex, right? And he's like, yeah, I wasn't trying to flirt with you. So it's a little awkward, but then they sit at lunch together and they start talking, and they're talking. Then Mark's friend William comes up. He's like, yo, I see you with your girlfriend. He's like, she's not my girlfriend. Then we cut to Mark at Burger Mart, which is the Burger King knockoff. And he's getting yelled at by his boss. He's like, you know what? I quit. And storms out. And he's like, my dad's going to kill me. we cut to the end of family dinner, and Mark and his dad Nolan are washing dishes. And they're just chatting about a bunch of stuff, and Nolan's like, now that you actually have powers, and you're kind of preoccupied with stuff, you don't need your job. So, like, if you're okay with it, you could quit. And Mark's like, oh, I can handle that. Then we see Mark getting it ready into his costume, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go on patrol. And his dad's like, well, it looks like well, I mean, you've had your powers for a while, so it looks like we're due for a team up. And the two of them are flying about, talking, and every so often, Omni-Man whooshes off to go stop a world problem. And, they're just talking, they're talking. Then they stop to get lunch, and, it's like a little bit of banter. Then his beeper, because, it's 2003, goes off, and he's like, I'm going to need your help with this one. And they whisk away before even Mark's half-eaten hot dog can fall. And we open up in an intergalactic war zone that's on Earth. These people, came through portals, and, they're fighting him off. And they're like, oh, they're aging by the second. That's really weird. And he's like, oh, Dad's like, time must move differently in their dimension. And, they're fighting. And Omni-Man's like, get off my planet. And Mark's like, whoa, you like at a 10, dude? He's like, they're leaving, Dad. It's over. And Mark's like, well, Dad, how often do, alien invaders from another dimension come up? He's like, it doesn't happen often. You know, if they would have stayed longer, we could have discovered their aging and blah, 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 blah. And they're talking. They split up for 2 seconds, but the dad runs even faster to get to another mall. And he finds a kid with another bomb, and he just chucks him out of the hole in the roof because it's got 2 seconds left. And as they're talking about it, he's like, what the heck? That was one of the missing kids from my school. And he's like, Dad was like, well, that would mean, and then boom, he gets pulled into another dimension by the aliens. So Mark flies back to his house, and he tells his mom, oh, he got taken to another dimension, so he probably won't be home for dinner. And she's like, that's good. That means more pork chops for us. And issue 3. Now we're up to issue 4, the final issue in this volume. And we pick up with Mark meeting up with Robot, and they're talking about all of the robots taking apart the robots that were being put together by the Mauler twins, which they stopped in the last issue. And Mark's talking to him, and he's like, oh, is Eve around? And he's like, well, Eve is dating Rex. He's like, that's not what I'm talking about. And they start talking about how kids started going missing from their school, and how they started ending up in being human bombs. And they talk a little bit. Mark goes home finally, and he sees his mom up watching TV. And, she's obviously worried about Nolan. And he's like, don't worry, Dad's going to be okay. He's the strongest guy on Earth. And, knowing what I know from the series, at this point in time, he's the strongest person on the Earth. Then we pick up with Mark and Eve, and they're in the school cafeteria, and they're talking. They're running over theories of what's happening, and then they're in class, and they're running over theories of what's happening, and the teacher's like, excuse me, we get it that you two are in love, but can we, focus on what I'm talking about? And he's like, well, we're not dating. And he's like, sorry, it won't happen again. He's like, that was super uncomfortable. And Eve was like, yeah. Then Robot calls her and is like, we need some backup. And we see a little bit of the fight scene of what's going on. And then Eve and Mark go off to the dumpsters to change to their superhero suits. And there's a couple there making out. They're like, go find your own makeout spot. We're moody teens. They change. They fly off to go help. And they find out who is the person who has been making all of the bombs, and it turns out that it was their teacher that yelled at them during class. And he's like, oh, I know it's you two, come on in, I know the cops aren't going to be coming for me. And he's like, oh, I know that you're here for the 4th kid. And they're like, the 4th? And they see a kid strapped to a table with a bomb literally implanted into his chest. And he's like, oh, no, I'm sure you must think that it's because of this, but it was actually because of, it's not that he was avenging the death of his son, but he was like trying to take out all of the dominoes that led up to that and blah 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 blah. And he's like, but it's okay. And he opens up. He's like, it's okay as long as it causes the death of two superheroes. And he opens up his chest with a bomb that's got 50 seconds, 5 seconds. It's hard to tell. I think it's 5 seconds. It's 5 seconds. My bad. Not 50, 5 seconds. And Mark pulls him out of the thing and starts zooming off. And then this is what we picked up with in the very first issue. And he throws him, kaboom, lands in a pile of snow, flies off to go talk to Eve. They're talking about it. He goes back to his house. He's like, is Dad back yet? And Mom's like, no, but we're gonna eat. Not yet, but go upstairs and clean yourself up. We're gonna talk during dinner. And then Nolan walks in. He's like, I need to shave. Debbie's so happy. And family dinner. They're talking about how their days went. He's talking about how he is how in the dimension that he was in, actually 8 months happened. And she's like, that's nice. Who's ready for dessert? And then in issue 4. And listen, the first 4 issues are a little fast and loose, but the rest of it's great. So you guys should definitely check it out. Now, we're going to move on to the fan reception, where you can buy it in my own personal rating. Okay, everybody, this is the part of the show when I talk a little bit about the fan reception, where you can purchase these fine comics for yourselves, and my own personal rating. So, first off, starting with the fan reception. From everything I could tell, people loved it because this, the first 4 issues aren't that different than a lot of superhero stories. As it goes on, it gets so good. And I also found out that the first issue sold about 10,000 copies after its release in 2003, and a lot was happening in the early 2000s for comics. So 10,000, that's a pretty decent chunk of change right there, especially because it wasn't coming from one of the two big main comic producers, which is Marvel and DC, with this coming from Image, in case we have forgotten over the course of this episode. Also, you can purchase this volume from a variety of places. First, we got Amazon. Then you can buy it from Image yourself. Then we got Barnes & Nobles, Comixology, and of course, the old staple comic book stores. Now, for my own personal rating, I had to look at this because I love the series. I've read through the entire series, issue 1 to issue 144, with all those like extra tie-in stuff like that. After thinking long and hard, I decided I was going to base it off of just these 4 issues, not the entire series, just these 4 issues. And for these 4 issues, I'm going to give it an 8. Now, the reason I'm giving it an 8 is because it plays very fast and loose. But because it's playing fast and loose, sometimes things can get a little too fast. But overall, in these first 4 issues, we get a lot of backstory, we get a lot of actual story in it, and it is great. But overall, I give it an 8. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to Comics Corner with me, Connor Nolan. If you like what you heard today, why don't you tell your friends about it and share it all around? And if you have any suggestions for what comics should be next on the show, leave a comment down below. And remember, comics are king.